If you're over 70 and you drive in Ontario, or if you have a parent or grandparent who does, there are rule changes sitting on the books right now that most families have no idea exist. I'm going to walk you through exactly what changed, why it changed, and what it actually means the next time that renewal notice shows up in the mailbox. Because for a lot of seniors, this isn't just paperwork anymore. Some of these changes can end with a fine or worse, a driver's license sitting suspended without anyone realizing it happened. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications because rules like this get updated quietly and almost nobody explains what they mean for the person actually behind the wheel. Let's get into it. Ontario has one of the fastest aging driving populations in the country, and the province knows it. That's exactly why on January 1st of this year, a sweeping package of Highway Traffic Act amendments came into force across Ontario, and it's still being rolled out and enforced as we speak. This wasn't a small tweak. It was described by the province as one of the largest overhauls of the Highway Traffic Act in years, and it touches license renewals, roadside penalties, and enforcement discretion all at once. Here's the part that matters for this video specifically. Two of those systems now overlap in a way that hits senior drivers harder than almost anyone else on the road. On one side, there's a renewal and screening program built specifically around older drivers. On the other, there's a much stricter, much less forgiving enforcement environment for everybody. When those two systems collide, a missed form or a failed screening doesn't just mean an inconvenient letter. It can mean you're technically driving on a suspended license without knowing it, and that is exactly where the fines start. Let's start with what actually changed for senior renewals, because this is the foundation everything else sits on top of. Under the updated rules, drivers aged 80 and over in Ontario must renew their license every 2 years, instead of the standard longer renewal cycle most drivers get. That renewal is not a quick online form. It requires an in-person appointment that includes a 90-minute group education session, a vision test, and a cognitive screening component. The vision test checks your visual acuity with your current corrective lenses, and if you can't meet the standard, you're sent to an optometrist for a formal report before the ministry will move forward. The cognitive portion includes tasks like a clock drawing exercise, where you're asked to draw a specific time on a blank clock face, and a letter cancellation task, both of which need to be completed within a short time window, typically just 2 to 3 minutes. There is no traditional written knowledge test at this stage. It's this screening instead. If the results raise any concern, or if your driving record shows collisions, the ministry can require a full road test before your license is renewed at all. Here's the detail almost nobody explains clearly. This program isn't designed to fail people. Most seniors who go through it walk out with no restrictions at all. But the process now happens twice as often as it used to, which means twice as many chances for a missed appointment, a missed letter, or a form that didn't get returned in time. And that leads directly into the second change, which is the one I actually want you to pay the closest attention to. The second change is the one that quietly creates the fine. If a renewal deadline passes without the required screening being completed, or if a senior fails a component and doesn't follow up with the additional testing that was requested, the license doesn't just sit in limbo. It can be suspended or restricted. And here is the part that catches families off guard every single time. A suspended or invalid license doesn't stop someone from getting in the car. Many seniors have driven for 60 or 70 years. Getting behind the wheel is automatic. It doesn't occur to most people to double-check whether their license is technically still valid before a routine drive to the pharmacy or a grandchild's school pickup. Under Ontario's set fine schedule, driving without a valid license is its own separate Highway Traffic Act offense, and it carries a real fine on top of whatever it takes to get the license reinstated. This is not a new penalty invented for 2026. What's new is how much more likely it is to actually happen now, because the renewal cycle got shorter and the screening got more detailed. More touch points means more opportunities for something small to slip through. And when it does, the fine doesn't wait for anyone to notice. The third change affects every driver in Ontario, but it lands differently on seniors, and it's about how roadside enforcement escalates. As part of the same January 1st package, roadside suspensions for alcohol or drug-related occurrences got significantly longer. A first occurrence suspension went from 3 days to 7. A second occurrence went from 7 days to 14. Mandatory remedial education now kicks in after the very first occurrence, not after repeat offenses like before. Why does this matter for seniors specifically? Because many older drivers are on prescription medications, some of which can affect reaction time or impairment status in ways that weren't a major enforcement focus a few years ago. The system no longer treats a first occurrence as a minor blip you can shrug off. It treats it as the start of an escalating record, and that record now follows you further and for longer than it used to. The fourth change is about something less visible, but arguably more important, and that's the shrinking role of officer discretion. For years, a lot of roadside judgment calls came down to the individual officer. A borderline situation could sometimes get resolved with a warning or a lesser charge. Multiple legal and driving safety sources have flagged that Ontario's 2026 enforcement environment is moving away from that. Some of this is tied to expanded look-back periods, meaning past incidents stay relevant on your record for longer than before. Some of it is tied to digital ticketing systems that are increasingly standardized rather than left to individual judgment at the roadside. I want to be careful here, because exactly how far this trend goes and how consistently it's applied province-wide is still developing, and I wouldn't treat any single claim about it as absolute. But the direction is consistent across everything the province has confirmed. The room for a quiet, informal resolution at the roadside is shrinking, and that affects senior drivers who might have relied on that flexibility in the past more than they realize. The fifth change is the one that shows up months later, and it's about insurance. Ontario's senior renewal program means your license status gets formally reviewed by the province every 2 years once you turn 80, instead of every 5 like most drivers. Every one of those renewal touchpoints is also a moment where your insurer can see updated information. Insurance providers have said plainly that a senior's driving and renewal record plays a direct role in how their policies get priced going forward. A restriction, a required road test, or a lapse in renewal doesn't just create friction with the ministry. It becomes a data point your insurer sees the next time your policy comes up. And unlike a points-based ticket, this kind of thing doesn't need to hit your driving record in a dramatic way to affect your premium. It just needs to exist. So here's the complete picture, because I want to leave you with something more useful than just a list. The senior renewal program itself isn't the villain here. It's a genuine safety measure, and most people who go through it come out fine. The real risk is the gap around it. It's the missed appointment, the letter that got set aside, the assumption that a license is still valid because it feels the same as it always has. That gap is where an ordinary day turns into a fine for driving without a valid license, layered on top of an already stressful renewal process. Add in longer roadside suspensions, less room for an officer to use discretion, and an insurer watching every renewal touchpoint, and you get a system that is far less forgiving of small administrative slips than it used to be. If someone in your life is approaching 80 or already past it, the fastest thing you can do this week is check exactly when their next renewal is due and put it somewhere it can't be missed. Confirm whether a vision or cognitive screening has been requested, and if it has, book it early instead of waiting for a follow-up letter. And have the honest conversation about what happens if a restriction does come back, because a plan made in advance is a lot easier than one made after a fine is already in hand. If you found this useful, send it to someone you know who's caring for an aging parent or who's approaching this stage themselves. One share could be the reason someone doesn't find out about this the hard way. I'll see you in the next one.